Today we're talking with Army veteran Brent Bowers from the Land Sharks. And Brent, you were on the show episode 408. This is episode 472. You were on episode 408 back November 22nd, 2021, a little over a year ago. I don't normally have people back for a second showing, but some awesome things have been going on since then. You've made some great strides in your business, and I actually ended up buying your course and jumping in with the Land Shark. So I got a success story I'll share with you too when we get to it. But before we talking about all that, take us back. Tell us a little bit about what you did in the Army and what your transition out was like.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me back, Joe. Good to see your face. Good to hear your voice again. You got amazing what you're doing over here with your podcast. And yeah, as far as what did I do in the military, I was enlisted first. I was a signal support specialist. So what does that mean? I was in charge of making sure that the trucks would communicate when they go outside the wire. The computers would all talk, Nipper, Sipper, Centrix, all those different systems we had. Only that veterans would know what I'm even talking about right now. But it was just it was kind of a high pressure job. I would have lieutenant colonels and colonels yelling at me, not yelling at me because I was doing a bad job, but hurry up and get this thing to where I can communicate. And then I went to the officer side of things. So I did active duty green to gold, did a couple combat deployments, was overseas for a few years, and really was kind of slowing down with that, looking to, be more of a family man, and ended up getting out in about 2018 timeframe.
Awesome. Yep. It's always a bad day when comm sucks. And of course, we all know you have to expect that comm's going to suck.
Yeah. And then I thought I would get out of that support side of things. And I ended up going quartermaster, which is just another support facet. Basically, I was in transportation and
Yeah.
food and fuel and water, which is as stressful, I think, just as
Oh, yeah.
stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody takes you for granted until it's not there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. So, talk about what your transition was like and where'd this whole vacant land thing come from?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the transition was amazing, because I started buying and selling vacant land, and it really, Joe, it was really out of fear. I believe there's two motivations for people. There's either fear of pain and away from pain, or towards pleasure. I am way more motivated by away from pain. And my pain was I did not want to lose another wife. I didn't want to go through another divorce. My first wife left me on my second deployment. It's kind of a country sad song about my life. She took my dog and everything. We didn't have kids, but she took the dog. She moved in with another man. And, as I was going through ROTC to become an officer, I met another lady. We got married, love of my life. I was like, man, this is the woman. We had a baby very quickly. She moved to Fort Carson, Colorado, and I was training up for combat deployment number 3, and I started getting like nervous, started getting scared, like, oh man, history is repeating itself. I'm going to lose another wife. Now there's children involved. And I've just got to change the way things are happening, because my 8.5 years in the military, I probably only got to see my own personal bed about 3.5 of those years. So I started listening to podcasts and searching for answers and what I can do to start making money to build a business that would serve me and my family while I transitioned out of that Army. Because the thing about the military is you can excel very, very quickly. You can start making really good money pretty quickly. So I was, eight years of service, O2 officer, and money started increasing. And it was just about to increase one more time when I hit O3. Well, I never made it to O3, but I had to, and here's the thing. Most people, if they make a certain amount of money, they spend a certain amount of money. So our spending usually increases as our income does.
Yep.
So I needed to make about 4,500 a month, and I just started buying land and selling it to people on payments. And I was buying like cheap, like garbage land, not buildable, not accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And it really lit on fire. I was making almost $9,000 a month in 9 months, and just kept building it and building it. And finally I was like, I'm putting in my refrad packet to get out.
That's awesome. Wow. Great, great, Great story. Thanks for very, very familiar in the veteran circles. So no real big surprises there. Something we can certainly all relate to. And if those things haven't happened to us, we know several buddies that those exact same things have happened to. So appreciate you sharing that. Um, so believe it or not, uh, you were back on the show back in November of 2022, 2021, excuse me. It was November 22nd of 2021. And after that, yeah, you and I talked for a while, and a couple weeks later, I ended up jumping into your course. I'm a member of the Land Sharks, and I bought the course. I just make sure everybody knows that I didn't get a freebie or anything. I bought the course, and I was in your course for a long time. I started doing all the things that you had recommended doing. I was sending out all the flyers. I had the phone number set up. I had the software. I was doing research on land. I had a local realtor helping me out, doing research with me and everything. And I chased a number of number of times down. I'd get to the end of looking at a piece of land. Long story short, I never could close a deal, and I'd get busy and do other things. And you and I talked about this once before. In the end, just a couple of months ago, so it took me like a year, I closed my first deal. And my first deal was actually 56 vacant lots. And I bought them with my self directed Roth IRA and my self directed traditional IRA. And the significance of that is if you buy a self directed IRA, allows you to buy, like you can do anything with it for the most part. So I bought land within my IRA. So when I sell these lots, no matter how much money I make, there's no tax implications whatsoever, especially on the Roth ever. And on the traditional, there'll only be a tax implication when I withdraw it later in life. So, two things, without the Land Sharks, I never would have done that. And I added a little twist to it there at the end. I was able to use my self-directed IRA. I use a company called Equity Trust to set up my self-directed IRA. You have to have a third party involved. And so that was my experience with Land Sharks. Plus, I've met some phenomenal good guys. The guy who, Drew Haney, fellow Army veteran. Actually, he's actually still in the reserves. Without him, I wouldn't have found that deal through a wholesaler. And plenty of other folks in the Land Sharks group that I'm still in the Facebook group, still fairly active, but doing it that way is what worked for me. And it took me a while to figure that out. And so talk a little bit about what your first couple experiences were with land, and maybe let's try to focus it towards veterans and those that are in the military. Why is vacant land a great thing for the military community?
Yeah, absolutely. And I applaud you, Joe. That's amazing. It took you a year, but I heard you did about one parcel a week because you bought 56 at one time. So that's really
Never thought
cool.
about it that way. That's exactly right.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, we had like I hear that so often. It's like, oh, it took me a lot longer than I planned, but I bought 16 parcels, and that was kind of my story. I bought a couple parcels right off the bat, and the first one was like $285. It was tax delinquent. The guy was about to lose it. It wasn't accessible. Basically, it wasn't buildable, and I just called the real estate office right down the street, and I'm like, "What is this thing worth?" And ended up selling it to that realtor. And I think I shared it on that first episode where we talked. And then I did a couple more, and then I started kind of like expanding and mailing an entire county. And I kind of slowed down. I wasn't getting the results I expected. And I'm so glad that Andrew had recommended the wholesaler, because I did find a land guy getting out of the land business.
Hmm.
And he's still selling me land today. I think I've bought almost 20 something parcels from him. And he just charges me what he paid for them because he's already been profitable. But as far as what does this mean to a veteran? What does this mean to someone in the military? I was active duty military. I was the executive officer for a forward support company, supporting an infantry battalion. We were training up for a 9-month deployment to Afghanistan. And basically, it was pretty busy. There was always a field X going on. There was always something to train for. And I pretty much lived in the field almost like 2 weeks out of the month. So really half the month. And I had to really time block because, I mean, Joe, you too, you're a very busy guy. You're a podcaster. You're doing things all the time. You're a businessman. And that's what I had to do when I was in the military, working, I mean, 12, 13, sometimes 14-hour days.
Mhm.
I would just have to figure out ways of time blocking. So I would send some letters out, and then I would go to the field and I wouldn't be able to take the calls. So I started finding team members to help me to do what I couldn't do. So as far as how does this relate to someone in the military? I use my EQRP, or I'm sorry, I use my what do they call it, the military, the thrift savings plan.
Uh-huh.
I was investing in the thrift savings plan, but I did exactly like you did, Joe. I turned it into a self-directed IRA because when I got out of the military, I was not doing a federal job anymore, so I can no longer invest into the TSP.
Yeah.
And I bought multiple parcels with that thrift savings plan that comes back in, the payments that come back in, tax deductible, or I'm not paying taxes because it's a Roth.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not super smart on all that, but there's so many ways the military can do this. And I'm not having to drive and go look at these properties. I'm sending land specialist realtors out there, and there's no maintenance, there's no repairs to be made. It's different than owning rental properties. Rental
Okay.
properties, it's just, yeah, it turned into a full-time job. I also was buying rental properties in the military, but I stopped when I found the land. I was like, the land is profitable way faster. I was profitable almost immediately because I would get a down payment large enough sometimes to pay for the purchase price. And then the income just kept rolling in. And then each time I sold a parcel, it increased. And then I told you, 9 grand in 9 months. So as far as how this could relate to the military, it's the ultimate side hustle.
Yeah.
It's recession proof too, because I'm only looking at comps, like comparable properties, like actual same size, same area that have sold in the last 30 days. So even when the market's going down like it is right now, we're getting it at an even bigger discount. So there's so many benefits and reasons why it worked for me as a military guy and
Yeah.
busy schedule. But I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully that was some examples.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to finish this discussion when we come back. So hold tight.
Makes total sense.
Okay, we're back talking with Army veteran Brent Bowers from the Land Sharks. As we said, Brent was on the show a little over a year ago. Brent, so we both kind of told our story and our success stories in vacant land. Somebody's listening to this show, they might be still in or on their way out, or they just got out, some kind of a transition coming up soon, or they might be in the middle of it. What are some things, what kind of advice do you have for them? Like, if they really want to check into this land thing, like how can they get some vacant land deals under their belt? How can they do a couple quick deals and make some money and validate this process, what we're talking about?
Great question, Joe. I love that question because, maybe people can't relate to you getting 56 land deals at one time, or to me, making 9,000 a month in 9 months. That first month I got out of the military, May 2018, I had a $55,000 a month, and the following month was a 78,000. But where did it start? Like, what are some practical steps to take today to start, to make that extra $5,000 on one actual parcel of land, or the extra 400 a month? And that's where I love to start. Is I started pretty much in my own backyard. For some of our audience, you might be stationed in Korea or Germany. It still works from overseas. You don't have to be physically local, but I recommend, if you can start in your own backyards, or maybe you're deployed right now, or training somewhere in Korea,
Mm-hmm.
you can do this virtually as well. And I recommend going to the area where you grew up. I invest right where I grew up in Florida, as well as I started in my backyard where I was currently living. I was stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado, and I just started figuring out where the land was selling. You know, that's that's really the best system now, and the course has changed since you came through a couple years ago, Joe. I've completely re-recorded the course on what's working for not just me, but many other of the land sharks community. So the first step is you want to go to Zillow or Redfin. I like those two websites. Some people might be licensed real estate agents. If you have access to the MLS, use that. Use what you're familiar with, but maybe you're not familiar with anything. I recommend going to Redfin, redfin.com, redfin.com, and going and clicking your area. Basically, let's just say your area is Orlando, Florida. Put in Orlando, Florida, and then I want you to go to the filters tab and click on sold, and then scroll down a little bit and click on land. And then you want to see the transactions that have happened in the past 30 days. And then go back to where you put Orlando in and hit the X mark right on Orlando. But what's going to stay there is that map. And you're really looking for the land that's sold in that area. Well, maybe there's no land that's sold. We'll zoom out a little bit and kind of pan around. I recommend doing this within about a 2.5 hour radius of where you currently live or where you grew up or where you're familiar with, because that's where you're looking for the land that's in demand. Because if their land is not selling, then it's going to be hard to sell the land. I don't want you to go and get a land at a massive discount and not be able to sell it. So that's the first step. Pick the land that's selling. And then once you see like a little cluster pattern, almost like we're sighting in our weapon system, we want to get a tight little pattern. I want you to click on each and every single one of those solds and have a spreadsheet out, or you can have just a yellow legal pad, but I use a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and I have two these are rows. Rows go up and down. I have two rows, one that says price, 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 and then the next is square foot or acres.
Okay. Rows
Right,
are across, columns are down.
Columns are horizontal, right?
No,
Horizontal column.
rows are horizontal. Columns are vertical.
All right, so I want you to do
Anyway,
two columns. Thank you. Golly, correct me on that. I'm a terrible officer. I can't even tell you what rows or columns are. All right, so anyhow, price, and square foot or acres. So what I'm trying to figure out is we want to know what the land is selling for by the square foot or by the acre. So if you put that price, it sold for 300,000 and it was 3 acres. Well, you take price divided by acres, it's 100,000 an acre, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe it's square foot. If you've got a 10,000 square foot parcel and it sold for $10,000, then it sold for $1 a square foot. So you're trying to see what the market is trading for in that area. And once you do that, you know your area. And then I want you to kind of apple to apple comparison it. So what does that mean? You want to micro it down to, if you're seeing 1 acre, 1 acre, 1 acre, 3 acre, 5 acre, 1 acre, 1 acre, 1 acre. All right, let's keep the 1 acres in its own category and figure out what those are going for. And now you know what a 1 acre parcel is selling for in that area. So you follow me? Did I lose you, or did I confuse everyone with the columns and the rows?
Well, I followed you, but I've actually, in the Land Sharks group on some of the live Zoom calls, I've actually seen you do this multiple times with some of the students. And people are like, well, I got this one property. I'm just not really sure what it might be worth. And you're like, give me the address. And you go in. I've seen you do this in Zillow and Redfin. And you're like, I think it's probably going to be worth about 15 grand an acre. And this is almost 2 acres. So yeah, it's probably worth about 30 grand. And they're like, oh, okay. So I've seen you do it. It's pretty cool.
All right. So
simple.
yeah,
It really is that simple.
and once you know what the land is worth in that area, now the next step is we want to get in touch with landowners. There's a couple ways to do it. You can go for the tax delinquent land. That's a little bit more like a few steps to take, a little harder to do it, but it's doable. You can call your tax collector or the county treasurer and say, hey, do you have any land that people are not paying their taxes on it? And they're going to probably send you this crazy list. You're going to have to figure out what parcels are the vacant raw land. Or you can hit the easy button and go to propstream.com and pull a list of landowners in that area that own 1 acre parcels and start mailing them a letter. I recommend maybe starting with a postcard. It's a little easier. The postcard, I can give it out, the link, but it's thelandsharks.com/postcard. Send a letter to the people that own 1 acre parcels in this area and start having conversations with them. See what they would sell the land for. Hey, what's the least you would take for it if I were to pay all cash and close quickly? You know that it's selling for, let's just say, 100,000 an acre. Well, you need to get it for a little less than 100,000 an acre to make a profit on it. So it's having conversations with these people and getting that land under contract. Where do you find these contracts? You can get them pretty much on any website that you have. Basically, you Google your state land contract. It's a free contract. You can get that property under contract. And what you want to do is you want to get it under contract at a discount. So what's a discount? If it's selling for 100,000 an acre, you got to figure your buyer's probably going to want a discount too. So maybe get it at 70,000 an acre and sell it to your buyer for 80,000. So you can make the difference between 80 and $70,000, which is 10 grand. 10 grand on one deal. If it takes you 3 months to do that, that's not a bad payday.
Yeah. Now some people are thinking, okay, but I don't have 80 grand to buy it with. So how am
Yeah.
I gonna do that?
Great question. So if I mailed you, Joe, and you have a 1 acre parcel of land and it's trading for about 100,000 an acre in your area, maybe you're in an expensive area, and I say, Joe, what's the least you can take for it? If I paid all cash and close quickly, I can get this thing closed pretty quick. I'm going to do everything. This is going to be easy. And you say, I want 80,000. And I said, Joe, is that the best you're willing to do? Because look, this is my side hustle. This is how I'm making additional income. You say, all right, you know what? Do it fast. I'll sell it to you for 70 grand. Awesome, Joe. I'm going to send you a purchase agreement. I'm going to go on Google. I'm going to Google my state land contract and I'm going to send it to you. You just got to sign it and send it back. You sign it and send it back for $70,000.
Mm-hmm.
I now have an asset under contract, keyword being under contract, at 70 cents on the dollar. I'm going to go and market this thing like crazy. I'm going to put it on Craigslist and Facebook. I'm going to call all the realtors in that area and say, hey, I've got 1 acre of land for sale for 80 grand. If you notice, everything else is selling for 100. This one's for 80 grand. Well, do you have any buyers? Can you send me a buyer? Do you know anybody that wants to buy this? Yes, I actually do. Well, we get that property, we get that purchase agreement to the title company. It's basically called an assignment of contract. I am just selling my contract to that buyer. I got it under contract for 70,000. My buyer's buying it for 80,000. I'm making the difference. I never have to pull a penny out of my pocket to assign that contract.
And there are owners that will do that with you.
And I'm glad you asked that, because a lot of people ask, why would someone ever sell a piece of land at that big of a discount? And I don't know why people do things. I stopped asking why, but I've gotten land for free at least 10 times. I've gotten land for free multiple times. Someone just wanted a pack of Pabst Blue Ribbon, PBR, for a land deal that I sold for $8,000. Why do people take Rolexes to pawn shops? Why do people sell their mothers and sometimes their wives' jewelry? Because it's just speed and convenience. That's it. Because think about this, a lot of people own land that they've never seen. They've been paying back taxes for years, or they were going to build on that land in Colorado one day maybe, and life just kept happening, and eventually they had babies, and those babies had babies. Now they're paying for those grandchildren's colleges, and they're like, you know what, honey, let's just sell this land. We're never going to do anything with it. And my letter comes in the mail, and now they're motivated.
And you're the guy standing at the door saying, I'll buy it. And a lot of people don't want to mess with realtors, and especially at the lower priced lots and pieces of land, a lot of realtors don't want to mess with that stuff. Like, what's a realtor's commission on a 70,000 acre parcel? Not a whole lot. Well, when you get down into like the 5, 10, and $20,000 parcels, you have a lot of realtors. It's not worth their time. So there's that unserved niche. It's unserved by real estate agents in many ways. Don't get me wrong, there are agents that do get involved in that, but in many ways, that unserved niche is where you come in, because a lot of agents don't want to mess with it, and a lot of people buying land don't want to mess with realtors. You never know what people's motivations are and that kind of thing. So the point is, it works, and you've seen it work many times. I've seen it just work a few times in my brief experiences with vacant land. So I'm coming from being a house flipper years ago, and made money on some, but then lost money on others, and probably was lucky to come out even if, after it all said and done. So getting involved in vacant land has been like so stress free. I mean, no toilets to fix, Um, Land is not regulated like houses. I mean, there's probably 1,000 reasons why vacant land works better for me and a lot of people than flipping houses.
Yeah, I can't agree enough with that. Inefficient. We call it an inefficient market because the land under
100,000, good luck getting a bank loan on it as
Yeah,
well,
well,
because
that's the other thing. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Banks don't want to loan on vacant land.
yeah, and that's why it works so well, the seller financing strategy. Now, have I flipped a lot of it? Have I assigned my contract on many of them? Yes, but my preferred method is to buy it for 10 or 15,000 and sell it for 3 times more than I paid for it. So if I buy it for 15,000, now I'm going to sell it for 45,000 on a note, a seller financing deal. Basically, I'm being the bank is all I'm being. And I'm getting 12% interest on it. And where am I finding the 15 grand? What if I don't have that money? Well, what if the seller financed it to me for 15,000, at 0% interest? So we call that positive arbitrage. Another way, I just borrowed 40 grand from my mother-in-law because I ran out of money with my self-directed IRA.
Mhm.
So I borrowed 40 grand from my mother-in-law. I'm paying her 9% interest, so she's pretty happy. And the day I purchased the land, we already had our seller lined up for 90,000 at 9% interest. So I'm paying my mother-in-law off in 5 years, and my buyer is paying his loan off in 13 years.
Yeah.
So my buyer pays 946 a month. My mother-in-law gets about 800 a month.
So you've had so many deals where you go into it with the intent to buy it first and then sell it as soon as you can, and you already have it sold anyways before you even go to the table to buy. Brilliant.
exactly. Yeah, we were
Marketing, because this was a longer deal to close. It took about as long. It took almost a year for us to buy this land because it had to go through several legal issues. But that gave us so much time to market and find that buyer. He gave us a down payment almost 6 months before he even took ownership or bought the land from us.
Yeah, and there's a lot of there's a lot of things about land. I mean, just owning land is kind of a cool feeling. Owning a house is like a nervous feeling for me. Like there's just a thousand things that can go wrong. The land really isn't going to change. Nothing on the land's going to break. You know, E-
And it's such an American thing.
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk. Go ahead, Joe.
Like
I think you had a little delay.
even if the land burns down, the land's still there. I mean, maybe your trees burn down, the house burns down, you're done. So it's just you just can't. It's just so much harder to screw up land. I mean, it's simple, and land of the free is probably what you're about to get to.
Yeah, and if I can do land, anybody can. I screw up columns and rows on an Excel spreadsheet. So, this is why I chose land. It is simple. Now, is it hard work? Is it work? Yes, but it's not hard work. But yeah, going back to, freedom, American, like who does not want to own a piece of American land? For a while there, I had some Chinese guys, say they would buy everything I had. Now, that was in the beginning. I only sold one parcel to those guys. I didn't have a lot of land back then, but I found doctors that just want to every single month put their money into land. They call it land banking, to
Mm-hmm.
where they're losing like 7 to 9% on inflation. Well, the land, it's almost like a safe haven for their money to sit in.
Yeah,
And it's American land. They're not making any more of it.
yeah. It's almost like a hedge against inflation, like gold or silver or whatever. So, um,
Yeah.
well, hey, believe it or not, we're like almost out of time, man. Holy cow, 29 minutes. So, hey, talk about the land shark. So if somebody's interested in get more information, working with you, checking out your course, tell us about that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. If you head on over to thelandsharks.com, fill out the application, schedule a call with me and my team. I'd be honored to hold your hand and walk you through the land investing journey and how to build a business for you and your family, that's a business that serves you and your family. But you must mention Joe Crane's name, mention this podcast, because I want to know where you came from. And here's the thing, it's changed my life. It definitely made me a happier person. It allowed me an exit strategy out of the military that I didn't know that I could even get. And it happened in such a short amount of time. I don't encourage people to get out of the military, but there's other ways to make additional income. My wife helped me as a stay-at-home mom while she was raising our children, while she would sit at home waiting for me. I was always gone. So it was just an incredible thing for our lives and my family. So appreciate you having me, Joe, for a second time.
You bet. All right. So what's the best way to contact you?
Head on over to thelandsharks.com. And if you just want to reach out to me and ask me a question, I'm on Instagram, Brent L. Bowers. I still reply to all messages. I've recently gotten on TikTok and I'm doing a video every day talking about how I'm buying and selling land. And that's Brent L. Bowers 1.
Awesome. TikTok, huh?
Yeah, TikToking.
All right. Excellent. Well, you got to move with the times, right?
That's right. Got to stay with the times.
All right. Well, hey, Brent, thanks for sharing your veteran entrepreneurial success story. It's awesome. Never gets old. Love hearing about it. And before I interviewed you last year, or almost in back at the end of 2021, you and I did not know each other from Adam. I interviewed him on my podcast, and I'm like, this is something that I'm definitely interested in. And then I jumped in, I bought the course, and it's been great. And I've gotten to know each other, over the last year or so, and so glad to have you back on, and glad to be working with you. I've learned a lot from you, and I would not have bought those 56 vacant lots in Arkansas had I never bumped into the Land Sharks and you. So I appreciate that.
God bless you, man. I'm so glad. I'm glad to hear that.
You bet. All right. Well, Brent, we're done. These two veterans are Oscar Mike. Adios.